Hello, this is Group 14 with Sylvia Puga, Steven Reyes, and Dalia Ramirez, and this is Psych 3362 Learning and Motivation. Thank you for joining our YouTube channel to discuss 3 ways operant conditioning is used in real-life situations. We'll be using 3 different articles to describe how operant conditioning can be used in real-life scenarios. Our first will be based on development of motor skills in children. Our second will be changing children's behavior through operant conditioning. And our third is reinforcement contingency learning in children with ADHD. Development of motor skills in children is a prime example of operant conditioning. Desired action or movements are encouraged through rewards, and undesired actions are discouraged through consequences. Reinforcers are applied based on certain conditions or rules called schedules of reinforcement. Schedules of reinforcement are rules that decide how often and when a desired behavior is rewarded. By changing these rules, the experimenter influences the when and the how often a subject performs the behavior. Timing and frequency of the behavior can be controlled by these schedules. The experimenter can manipulate the subject to respond very frequently or very infrequently. According to the article, behaviors learned through intermediate or partial reinforcement are harder to stop because the unpredictability of the reward makes the behavior more persistent than behaviors learned through conscientious reinforcement. Conscientious reinforcement leads to a faster learning strategy and a faster extinction once the reinforcement stops. For example, if a child quickly learns to expect the reward every time, and when it doesn't arrive, the behavior is abandoned quickly. So by using discriminative stimulus to indicate when a reward is available, and by planning how and when those rewards are given, the experimenter can teach a child to perform specific and predictable actions and secure those actions will continue over time. Our first example of operant conditioning and motor behavior is a study done by Johnson and colleagues in 1966, which applied their reinforcement techniques to a 3.5-year-old child to develop climbing and play on climbing frame. The child was physically inactive and avoided climbing equipment. The study used the process of shaping behavior by using a technique called fading within the principles of operant conditioning to encourage a child to climb the climbing frame. The study consisted of giving and withholding social reinforcement like attention, smiling, and verbal encouragement. The child received a reward for just showing interest or being near the climbing frame. Even if they didn't actually touch it or start climbing it, this made the child more likely to approach the frame again. And as the child gradually approached the frame, the rules for getting the reward are changed. The reinforcement was faded out for the approaching behavior and applied only to a more specific desired behavior, which encouraged the child to actually start climbing to receive the reinforcement. In 9 days after the reinforcement process was consistent, the child's outdoor activity spent on the climbing frame went from less than 1% to 67%, an incredible improvement.
Hello, class. My article was changing children's behavior through operant conditioning. Conditioning through action and outcome. Overall, this process, central to the article, explains how children's voluntary actions are shaped by their environmental feedback and what is around them. The essential mechanism is a contingency between a child's behavior and the event that follows it. The authors emphasize the consequences in this article, which are the direct leverage used by adults to influence the child's future choices and their overall behavioral frequency. Constant recompense. This schedule is most effective during the initial stages of learning a new skill or when they have a desired behavior. This provides immediate and clear feedback. The downfall of relying solely on this method is that the child may become reliant on the reward, causing the good behavior to cease quickly if the reward is ever missed immediately after. The article highlights the importance of a discriminative stimulus, which signals to the child that the appropriate response will immediately lead to the reward. Now, movement training, or so-called motor training. This section also illustrates how complex physical skills can be built piece by piece in children using the principle of shaping. Shaping involves rewarding a child for successive approximations, which are behaviors that get incrementally closer to the ultimate target movement. The core lesson is that adults should never wait for the perfect behavior. They should reinforce small positive steps toward the goal. Incentive strategy. The most powerful tool for behavior change, according to the article, is positive reinforcement, especially social attention and praise. Effective application requires that the reward be immediate and specific to the desired action to get the maximum result. The authors caution that adults must ensure the reward is actually valued by the child, as an ineffective incentive will not change the behavior for the children. Now, my results. This part ultimately demonstrated that even with simple social reinforcement, a child's entire engagement profile with a specific activity can be dramatically and rapidly reversed. The significant increase in activity time confers the efficacy and efficiency of behavior modifications when operant principles are applied consistently and systematically. The long-term takeaway is that structured, predictable feedback is a powerful educational tool for lasting behavioral adjustment.
My article is Reinforcement Contingency Learning in Children with ADHD, Back to the Basics of Behavioral Therapy. The background of the article is the ADHD and behavioral therapy affects ADHD affects 5 to 7% of children and often treated through behavioral parent training, which is based on the operant learning principles, reinforcement, which are reinforcement and punishment. Reinforcement learning theories, which are dynamic development theory, were talked about by Sagvalden in 2005. ADHD developed from weak dopamine signals that disrupt learning, especially with delayed rewards. Dopamine transfer deficient theory is ADHD children fail to form anticipatory dopamine signals during partial or delayed reinforcement, impairing learning. Three, which we'll be talking about in the article, which is partial reinforcement extinction effect, is behavior learned with intermittent reinforcement persists longer after rewards stop. The theories make opposite predictions about ADHD, which the article about the Sagvalden is slower extinction and the other one is faster extinction. The methods used was that the participants were 119 children aged between 8 to 12 years old, 62 typically developing, and 49 of them had ADHD. ADHD diagnosis confirmed through structured interviews and they were excluded if the IQ was higher than 80 or from thwarted disorders like autism. Reinforcement learning task, which was a ball game. So it was a touchscreen task mimicking a Skinner box. Children learned from which colored ball earned a candy reward. Reinforcement condition, which is 100% of the time, which is continuous, 20% of the time is partial, and then 120% is gradually stretching the ratios. After 20 rewards and extinction phase, no reinforcement tested behavioral persistence. The measures were acquisition, number of trials to earn 20 rewards, extinction, which is correct responses to the previously awarded ball with persistence, and total responses exploration. The results showed for acquisition, children learn fastest under continuous, slower stretching, and slowest under partial reinforcement. No significant difference between ADHD and typically developed groups. Extinction, behavior persisted longer after partial or stretch reinforcement than after continuous. No significant group differences in extinction. Exploratory analysis hinted that ADHD children might show less exploratory behavior during extinction under partial reinforcement. In discussions, the key findings were no ADHD specific deficiencies in learning or extinction under partial reinforcement. Both groups displayed a stretching the ratios improved acquisition speed without reducing behavioral persistence. Theoretical implications results did not support dopamine deficient models predicting impaired learning or altered extinctions in ADHD. Possible lower exploratory behavior in ADHD might relate to frustration or difficulty adapting to changes contingencies. The clinical implications were supporting gradual reinforcement reduction in behavioral therapy and then encourages therapists and parents to shift from continuous to partial reinforcement to maintain learned behaviors. In conclusion, children with ADHD learn and retain behaviors similarly to their peers when reinforcement is immediate. Gradual reduction of reinforcement can effectively promote faster learning while maintaining persistence, offering a practical strategy for improving behavioral therapy outcomes. And here are references for articles used.